The sound that haunted me wasn't the alarm. It was the click. A single lock disengaging somewhere inside the mansion. Quiet. Precise. Final. People imagine power as loud. They picture gunfire, shouting, expensive cars. They've never stood inside a house so silent that everyone could hear trust breaking apart. My name is Christopher Vaughn. For 15 years, nobody had ever stolen from me. Until that Thursday morning. Rain tapped softly against the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the cliffs outside Newport. The Atlantic looked gray enough to swallow the horizon, while inside the estate, everything remained exactly where it belonged. Except one thing. The safe hidden behind my grandfather's oil painting stood open. The steel door hung motionless. Inside, an encrypted solid-state drive was gone. No money. No jewelry. No weapons. Just one black drive containing every confidential agreement scheduled for negotiation over the next 6 months. Someone hadn't come to rob me. Someone had come for information. Seal every entrance. My voice barely rose above a whisper. The command echoed through the security room anyway. Within seconds, 32 cameras appeared across the wall-sized display. Every hallway. Every staircase. Every service corridor. Every employee. No signs of forced entry. No broken locks. No masked intruders. Then my head of security stopped the playback. There. A woman stepped out of the private study carrying a basket of freshly folded towels. Amara Brooks. 26. Housekeeper. She wore the estate's immaculate housekeeping uniform, a tailored ivory blouse beneath a charcoal apron dress, practical yet elegant, sleeves neatly rolled, dark hair gathered into a soft low bun. She looked exactly as she had every morning for almost a year. Calm. Professional. Invisible. Until now. Run it again. The footage replayed. She entered the study. Stayed inside 4 minutes. Left alone. No one entered afterward. One of my senior advisors folded his arms. I warned you. His name was Malcolm Pierce. He had never liked her. People like her don't stumble into houses like this by accident. Another executive nodded. Background checks can be forged. Nobody questioned the evidence. Because evidence is comforting. It saves us from asking harder questions. I stared at the screen. Amara never looked toward the camera. She simply walked away carrying the towels. No hurry. No panic. No visible guilt. Somehow, that bothered me more. Bring her. She arrived less than 3 minutes later. She didn't cry. She didn't protest. She stood straight with her hands folded before her, meeting my eyes with a quiet dignity that made the room unexpectedly uncomfortable. The drive is missing, I said. I know. You were the last person inside. I was. Did you take it? She held my gaze. No. The answer came without hesitation. No trembling voice. No defensive anger. Just certainty. Malcolm scoffed. Search her room. 2 guards disappeared upstairs. Minutes later they returned carrying a black backpack. One of them placed it on the conference table. Inside, lay the missing drive. Silence crushed the room. Every eye shifted toward Amara. Malcolm smiled first. I believe that settles it. The guard stepped closer. I waited. One explanation. One plea. Anything. Instead, Amara looked at me with something I couldn't understand. Not fear. Not shame. Disappointment. If that's what you choose to believe. She said quietly, then I won't stop you. She removed the estate key from her apron pocket. Placed it gently on the table. I'll leave. That's all. Malcolm laughed. No excuses. She ignored him. Her attention never left mine. One day, Christopher. For the first time since she entered, she spoke my name. You'll wish you had asked me why. She walked toward the door. No one stopped her. Neither did I. The mansion felt strangely colder after she disappeared. An hour later, the legal team sealed the investigation. Case closed. Employee dismissed. Evidence recovered. Everyone congratulated themselves. Everyone except me. That evening, unable to silence the unease growing inside me, I returned alone to the security room. The technician had archived the footage. I was about to shut the system down, when I noticed something odd. The recording from camera 14 was exactly 4 minutes long. But the system log showed, the camera had actually recorded 4 minutes and 23 seconds. 23 seconds were missing. I replayed the timeline 12 times. Every second. Every frame. Every reflection in the polished floor. The missing 23 seconds weren't corrupted. They had been removed. Deliberately. That bothered me more than the stolen drive. Because someone inside my own security team had enough access to rewrite evidence. Power teaches you many things. The first is this: the moment someone edits the truth, they're no longer protecting you. They're protecting themselves. Restore the original file. The technician beside me hesitated. I can't. Can't. The backup server was overwritten automatically. By who? He swallowed. The command came from an executive authorization. My eyes settled on the approval code. Not mine. Malcolm Pierce. By sunrise, the mansion had returned to its usual rhythm. Housekeepers polished marble floors. Gardeners trimmed hedges overlooking the Atlantic. Chefs prepared breakfast as though nothing had happened. Only one absence felt louder than every familiar sound. Amara. No one mentioned her name. People simply adapted. That disturbed me. A year of loyalty erased in a single afternoon. As if people disappeared more easily than memories. I found Mrs. Eleanor Davis arranging fresh lilies in the library. She had managed the estate longer than anyone. Nearly 30 years. If you're looking for clean towels, she said gently, you'll have to wait. I almost smiled. Almost. What was Amara like before she worked here? Eleanor stopped arranging the flowers. Why ask now? Answer me. She looked disappointed. Not in me. In the question itself. She remembered everyone's birthday. Silence. She stayed after hours when one of the gardeners had a stroke. Another flower found its vase. She secretly paid for one of the kitchen assistant's nursing classes. I frowned. You knew. I know almost everything that happens inside this house. Then why didn't anyone defend her yesterday? Eleanor finally met my eyes. Because you had already made your decision. The sentence landed harder than accusation. Nobody had argued, because nobody believed I would listen. 3 hours later I drove into Newport alone. No convoy. No security vehicles. Just rain sliding across the windshield. It took surprisingly little effort to find Amara. She hadn't hidden. She was scrubbing paint from the windows of a small neighborhood community center. Children chased one another across the parking lot. An elderly volunteer laughed while handing out lunches. It was the last place I expected to find someone accused of corporate theft. She noticed me before I reached the entrance. You shouldn't be here. You expected me. I expected questions. You never answered the first ones. She smiled faintly. No. You never asked the right ones. I hated that she was right. Why didn't you defend yourself? She looked toward the children instead of me. Would it have mattered? I opened my mouth. Nothing came. Because I already knew the answer. No. The drive had been found in her backpack. The room had judged her before she spoke. Including me. She wiped her hands on a clean cloth. Christopher. My name sounded different coming from her now. Not respectful. Not distant. Just honest. Sometimes people accept blame. Because explaining the truth would put someone else in danger. Every instinct inside me sharpened. Who? She slowly shook her head. I can't tell you. Why? Because I gave my word. I stepped closer. You lost your job. I know. You lost your reputation. I know. And you're still protecting them? Her answer came almost immediately. I'm protecting someone who can't protect themselves. Before I could ask another question, tires screeched outside. A black luxury sedan stopped across the street. 2 men remained inside. Neither got out. Neither looked away from Amara. She noticed them. For the first time since I'd met her. I saw fear. Not for herself. For whoever she had chosen to protect. She quietly whispered, "You need to leave." Why? Her eyes never left the sedan. Because if they see you talking to me, the next person they erase won't be me. I left first. Not because I believed her warning. Because she looked at that black sedan the same way people look at a storm already too close to outrun. The rain intensified as I crossed the street. In my rearview mirror, the sedan remained parked. Engine running. Windows dark. Watching. When I glanced back again, it was gone. So was the sense that any of this had been coincidence. Back at the estate, I ordered every visitor log, vehicle record, and security report from the previous 6 months. Nothing unusual. Everything perfect. Too perfect. Real organizations leave mistakes behind. Only manufactured stories are flawless. Malcolm entered my office carrying a fresh stack of contracts. I heard you visited her. News traveled fast. I asked questions. And? She denied taking the drive. He shrugged. They all do. His certainty irritated me more than his words. What if she's telling the truth? He laughed quietly. Christopher, you built this organization because you trusted evidence instead of emotions. I did. So don't abandon your own rules. He placed a document on my desk. Several board members are concerned. About what? They think your judgment has become personal. Personal. Interesting choice. Less than 24 hours after dismissing an employee, people were already questioning my leadership for speaking to her. Someone wanted this investigation buried. Quickly. That evening I requested an independent forensic recovery of camera 14. Not through my own technicians. Through a digital forensics laboratory in Providence that had never worked for me before. 3 hours later, the director called. Mr. Vaughn. Tell me. The footage wasn't deleted. What? It was replaced. Every muscle in my body stiffened. Explain. The visible recording is authentic. Except for 23 seconds. They were overwritten using footage recorded exactly 48 hours earlier. Someone hadn't erased the truth. They had manufactured a new one. Professional. Expensive. Planned long before the theft. Only a handful of people even knew that level of manipulation was possible. I slowly looked toward the framed organizational chart hanging beside my desk. Every name represented trust. One of them represented something else. Before sunrise I drove to the forensic lab myself. The restored footage had finally rendered. The technician enlarged the screen. There are still missing pixels. I don't care. Watch the doorway. The video began. Amara entered carrying folded towels. She cleaned the shelves. Adjusted a picture frame. Walked toward the safe. Then, she suddenly stopped. Not because she opened it. Because she heard someone outside. She quickly removed the drive. My jaw tightened. She had taken it. The technician paused the video. I thought you said this proved her innocence. It isn't over. He pressed play again. Amara didn't place the drive into her backpack. She hid it behind a loose wooden panel beneath the fireplace. Seconds later, the study door opened. Not by force. Using an authorized keycard. A man stepped inside. Only his shoulder and wrist were visible. The camera angle never captured his face. But one detail remained perfectly clear. A heavy platinum signet ring engraved with the Vaughn family crest. Only senior members of my organization wore that ring. Amara looked directly at him. Without saying a word. Then she reached into her backpack, removed another drive, an identical decoy, and deliberately placed it where anyone searching her belongings would find it. She hadn't stolen the evidence. She had hidden the real one. And sacrificed herself to protect it. The technician slowly turned toward me. Do you know who that man is? I couldn't answer. Because I recognized the ring. I had presented it myself. To Malcolm Pierce 5 years earlier. The ring followed me home. Not the piece of metal itself. The memory of handing it to Malcolm. 5 years earlier. The night I promoted him. You've earned my trust. I could still hear myself saying it. Funny how confidence always sounds wiser in hindsight. I didn't confront him. Not yet. People reveal more when they believe they're safe. Instead, I returned to the estate as if nothing had changed. Breakfast proceeded on schedule. Board members discussed shipping contracts. Lawyers debated tax strategies. Malcolm sat across the table, calmly reviewing quarterly projections. His hands never shook. The platinum ring rested exactly where it always had. Polished. Unremarkable. Visible. If I hadn't seen the footage, I would never have looked twice. Power isn't dangerous because enemies lie. It's dangerous because friends become part of the furniture. Eventually, you stop noticing they're there. That afternoon I excused myself from the meeting. Not to search Malcolm's office. To search the fireplace. Exactly where Amara had hidden the real drive. The old library was empty. Rain tapped softly against stained glass windows while the fire burned low beneath carved oak shelves. I knelt beside the stone hearth. The loose wooden panel came away almost effortlessly. Behind it, nothing. The compartment was empty. Someone had already been there. A cold realization settled in. The restored footage had reached only me. Which meant whoever removed the drive hadn't learned about it from the video. They had already known where Amara hid it. They hadn't followed her. They had watched her. For much longer than one afternoon. I drove back to the community center before sunset. Amara was stacking donated books into children's backpacks. She looked surprised. Not frightened. Just tired. You saw it. It wasn't a question. You knew the cameras would eventually be restored. I hoped. You protected the real drive. She nodded once. I did. Where is it now? I don't have it. Who does? She remained silent. The old instinct returned. Demand answers. Issue orders. Take control. It had built everything I owned. It had also cost me every relationship that ever mattered. I took a slow breath instead. What am I missing? Something softened in her expression. For the first time, she looked at me as though I might actually hear the answer. You keep asking who stole something. She closed another backpack. But you're asking the wrong question. What should I ask? She met my eyes. Who was desperate enough to risk being seen? The distinction hit harder than I expected. The theft wasn't about profit. It was about fear. Fear makes careful people careless. Before I could speak again, a volunteer rushed through the front entrance holding a television remote. They're talking about you. Every screen inside the community center switched to a breaking news broadcast. A financial journalist stood outside my estate. Sources confirm federal investigators are preparing to examine allegations of concealed offshore accounts linked to Vaughn Holdings. Behind the reporter appeared leaked photographs. Private documents. Confidential ledgers. Information that had been stored on the missing drive. My stomach dropped. Impossible. The drive had vanished. Unless someone had already copied it. The anchor continued. An anonymous whistleblower claims additional evidence will be released within 24 hours. Every volunteer in the room slowly looked toward me. Not with admiration. Not with fear. With suspicion. Exactly the way I had looked at Amara. I understood then what public judgment felt like when the story wasn't finished. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A distorted voice spoke calmly. You finally watched the security footage. A pause. Now ask yourself. Why did Malcolm want you to blame the only person trying to save you? The anonymous call ended. No threats. No demands. Only one question. Why did Malcolm want you to blame the only person trying to save you? The silence afterward was louder than the words. I had spent years believing doubt made me strong. Now I wondered whether it had simply made me predictable. By nightfall every national news network carried my name. Not as a businessman. Not as a philanthropist. As the man allegedly hiding billions through shell corporations. The leaked documents looked authentic. Because most of them were. Someone had mixed truth with carefully crafted lies. Enough facts to make every accusation believable. My board demanded an emergency meeting. Half the directors wanted me to step aside. The other half wanted Malcolm to take temporary control until the investigation ended. Temporary. The most dangerous word in any organization. Because power rarely finds its way back to the person who willingly surrenders it. Malcolm spoke calmly. We need stability. No raised voice. No visible ambition. Only concern. The room almost applauded him. Almost. If I hadn't watched the restored footage, I might have done the same. I'll consider every recommendation, I said. But no decision will be made tonight. Several directors exchanged uneasy glances. They expected panic. Instead, I walked out. I found Amara sitting alone on the community center rooftop. The rain had finally stopped. The city lights reflected across the harbor like broken pieces of glass. You shouldn't keep coming here, she said without turning around. They're watching. I know. You'll lose more than your reputation. I already have. That finally made her look at me. Not with sympathy. With curiosity. I handed her a folded newspaper. My photograph covered the front page. Empire under investigation. She read the headline. Then quietly folded it again. I'm sorry. No. I shook my head. You warned me. I did. I didn't listen. She studied my face for a long moment. You've apologized. Not yet. I came because I finally have the right question. She waited. Instead of asking where the drive was, I asked, who were you trying to protect? The wind carried away the silence between us. When she finally answered, her voice barely rose above a whisper. A forensic accountant. I frowned. Working for me? No. Working against the people hiding inside your organization. She reached into her bag and removed a faded photograph. 3 people stood together outside a courthouse. Amara. An older woman. A middle-aged man wearing glasses. His name is Daniel Mercer. He discovered money flowing through charities, shipping firms, and private security companies. He was going to testify. What happened? He disappeared. The answer came without emotion. Like grief repeated too many times. I promised his wife I would keep the evidence alive. And the drive? It contained the only financial trail proving he wasn't imagining the fraud. Everything shifted. The missing drive had never been about my empire. It had been about exposing someone else's. Someone hidden behind my own business. My phone vibrated. An internal security alert. Unauthorized access detected. Executive Vault. I looked at the timestamp. 3 minutes ago. Impossible. The vault required my biometric authorization. Unless, someone had duplicated it. We reached the estate in less than 15 minutes. Security guards stood unconscious near the entrance. No gunfire. No blood. Only precision. Inside the executive vault, every cabinet remained untouched. Every safe remained locked. Except one. Mine. Resting neatly in the center of the steel table was a single envelope. No fingerprints. No address. Inside waited one page. A list. 22 names. Board members. Lawyers. Bank executives. Politicians. Every person receiving secret payments. At the very bottom, one final name had been handwritten. Christopher Vaughn. I stared at it in disbelief. I've never taken their money. I know, Amara said quietly. I looked at her. How? She slowly pointed toward the handwriting. Because. I wrote that name myself. I looked at the list. Then at Amara. Then back at the name she had written. Mine. Every instinct I had built over 2 decades told me to feel betrayed again. To question her. To demand an explanation. Instead. I remembered the first time. The security footage. The missing 23 seconds. The certainty that had almost destroyed an innocent person. I refused to make the same mistake twice. Tell me why. Those 3 words changed everything. Amara slowly folded the paper before answering. I added your name because they needed someone believable. What do you mean? If your name wasn't there, they would know the list had been compromised. I stared at her. So you sacrificed my reputation. I protected your life. The distinction settled heavily between us. She continued. They've been watching every transfer of evidence. They expected me to hand this list directly to federal investigators. So they could identify their leak. I finally understood. The list wasn't evidence. It was bait. Anyone who touched it became visible. Including me. We moved into the old records room beneath the estate. No phones. No wireless network. Only paper files older than either of us. For the first time since this nightmare began, there were no guards. No advisors. No board members. Only silence. I owe you an apology. She didn't answer. I accused you. You did. I never asked why. You didn't. Her honesty hurt more than anger would have. I've done this before. The confession escaped before I could stop it. When I was 27. I stared at the dust drifting through the narrow beams of light. I accused my younger sister of selling information to a rival family. Amara looked at me quietly. I never let her explain. 3 weeks later my sister left the city. We argued one final time. Then her car slid off an icy bridge during a winter storm. The police ruled it an accident. My last words to her had been filled with suspicion instead of love. I've spent 9 years convincing myself I was protecting everyone. My voice almost disappeared. But maybe I've only been protecting myself from trusting people. Amara didn't rush to comfort me. She simply sat beside me. Sometimes compassion sounds like advice. Sometimes, it sounds like giving someone enough silence to face themselves. After a long moment, she spoke. Guilt can teach you. It just shouldn't become the person making your decisions. For the first time in years, I believed someone wasn't trying to control me. She was trying to help me become better. The peace lasted less than 10 minutes. Emergency lights suddenly flooded the hallway. One of the estate's oldest employees stumbled into the records room. Mrs. Eleanor Davis. Her breathing was uneven. They've taken Malcolm. I stood immediately. Who? They weren't police. They knew every security code. They emptied his office. And before they left, she handed me a small memory card. They told me this belonged to you. Amara inserted it into an offline laptop. A single video appeared. Malcolm sat alone in a dimly lit room. No bruises. No restraints. He looked directly into the camera. If Christopher is watching. He stopped to steady his breathing. I lied to you. I altered the footage. I framed Amara. But I wasn't the one you should have feared. He looked toward someone standing beyond the camera. His face drained of color. I never worked for them. I worked. A loud metallic crash echoed. The camera shook violently. The recording froze for 1 second. Then another figure stepped into frame. Not clearly enough to reveal a face. Only an expensive tailored sleeve, and a distinctive silver cufflink engraved with a single letter. V. Before the screen went black, the stranger spoke only one sentence. You've been looking inside your house, Christopher. You should have been looking inside your own name. The letter V stayed on the screen long after the video ended. One engraved initial. One unfinished sentence. One truth waiting somewhere beneath everything I thought I knew. You should have been looking inside your own name. I replayed the recording 3 more times. Not searching for the man's face. Searching for Malcolm's. He wasn't terrified until someone stepped into the room. That meant one thing. He had recognized them. Who carries a Vaughn cufflink besides you? Amara asked. Family. Only family. And a few honorary executives. She nodded slowly. So the initial doesn't identify the man. It identifies access. Exactly. Anyone wearing that symbol could enter rooms no outsider ever could. Which meant the conspiracy had never broken into my empire. It had grown inside it. By dawn, I requested every document connected to the Vaughn Family Foundation. Not the shipping company. Not the investment firms. The charity. The one organization everyone praised. Scholarships. Medical grants. Children's hospitals. No journalist had ever questioned it. Which made it the perfect place to hide financial movement. An accountant entered carrying 20 years of archived records. I found something strange. He slid an old ledger across my desk. Most signatures belonged to board members. One didn't. Victoria Vaughn. I stared at the name. My aunt. The woman who had raised me after my parents died. She had retired 6 years earlier. Or so I believed. The final authorization under her name had been signed. Last month. Impossible. She hadn't attended a board meeting in years. Unless, someone never wanted her to stop signing. I want to see her. The accountant lowered his eyes. You can't. Why not? She moved into assisted care. When? 3 years ago. 3 years. No one had told me. Not Malcolm. Not the board. Not even the family attorney. For 3 years. I had been signing annual reports without once asking why my aunt had disappeared from every meeting. I had been too busy. Or maybe too comfortable. The care facility overlooked Narragansett Bay. Quiet gardens. White fences. The kind of place designed to hide painful truths behind beautiful flowers. Victoria recognized me immediately. Christopher. She smiled warmly. You finally came. Guilt arrived before words did. I should have come sooner. You always say that. She reached for my hand. Her grip remained surprisingly strong. I need to ask you something. About the foundation? I froze. You know. She laughed softly. I know far more than anyone wanted me to. The warmth left her eyes. They stopped bringing me documents after I refused to sign. Who? They said protecting the family mattered more than protecting the truth. My heartbeat slowed. Was Malcolm involved? No. The answer came instantly. He followed orders. From who? She looked toward the window. For several long seconds, I thought she wouldn't answer. Then she whispered one name. Vincent. I searched my memory. Nothing. I don't know a Vincent. You did. Her voice trembled. You were 10. He worked for your father. Then she said something that shattered every assumption I had carried since childhood. The night your parents died. They weren't coming home from a business meeting. They were driving to meet a federal prosecutor. The room seemed to tilt. No. They had decided to expose the organization. And someone inside the family learned about it first. My entire life had been built on a lie. Before I could ask another question, every light inside the facility suddenly went dark. Emergency generators failed. Hallways fell silent. Then came the unmistakable sound of security doors locking throughout the building. Amara looked toward the entrance. They're here. My phone lit up with a single incoming message. If you want the truth about your parents, come alone. I stared at the message. Come alone. 8 words. The kind of invitation that had buried better men than me. Every instinct told me to ignore it. Every unanswered question pulled me toward it. Amara gently touched my arm. Don't make the same mistake twice. I can't walk into a trap. No. She met my eyes. But you also can't walk in believing you already know who's waiting. There it was again. The lesson I had resisted my entire life. Don't decide the ending before hearing the truth. I looked at the darkened hallway. Then back at Victoria. I'll come back. She smiled sadly. You already have. The location arrived 30 seconds later. An abandoned maritime archive on the edge of the old Newport shipyard. No warehouses. No abandoned factories. Just a forgotten records building where shipping manifests had once been stored before everything became digital. Appropriate. Someone had chosen a place built to preserve history. I entered alone. Just as instructed. Dust floated through narrow beams of afternoon light. Thousands of empty shelves stretched into darkness. Every footstep echoed. Christopher. The voice came from somewhere above. I looked toward the second-floor balcony. A gray-haired man stepped into view. Tailored navy overcoat. Silver cufflink engraved with the letter V. No bodyguards. No weapon in his hands. Only a folder. I'm Vincent Harrow. The name landed like an unfinished memory. I worked for your father. I know. You also think I murdered him. I don't know what to think anymore. For the first time. Vincent smiled. Good. Because certainty nearly destroyed you. He slowly descended the staircase. Every movement calm. Measured. Like someone who had rehearsed this conversation for years. I never wanted your empire. Then what do you want? You. I frowned. My father wanted you to inherit power. Vincent shook his head. Your mother wanted you to inherit freedom. He placed the folder on an old wooden table between us. Inside were photographs. Federal meeting requests. Bank transfer records. Letters written by my parents. My mother's handwriting stopped me cold. Christopher deserves the truth before he deserves the business. My hands trembled. They were going to dismantle everything. Vincent nodded. They discovered that respected charities across the East Coast were laundering money for people who hid behind legitimate companies. The foundation was only one piece. I looked up. If you knew all this, why stay silent for 20 years? His eyes drifted toward the broken windows. Because your father asked me to. Silence filled the room. He knew exposing everyone at once would place you in danger. So he left you behind. No. Vincent's voice cracked for the first time. He left me alive. The difference mattered. I've spent 20 years protecting documents. Because I couldn't protect him. Before I could answer, footsteps echoed through the archive. Not one person. Many. Amara appeared from the opposite entrance. She ignored my surprised expression. I know. I wasn't supposed to come. But I stopped following bad instructions after you fired me. Despite everything. I almost laughed. Vincent looked at her with quiet respect. She's the first person who's challenged you without wanting something from you. He was right. She never wanted my money. My influence. Or my approval. Only the truth. Suddenly the archive doors burst open. Not armed criminals. Federal investigators. Financial crime agents. Uniformed officers. Leading them, was Malcolm. Alive. Exhausted. Holding a signed cooperation agreement. He walked directly toward me. I told them everything. His voice shook. The accounts. The forged signatures. The board. The foundation. He handed me a warrant. They're not here for you. They're here because you finally stopped protecting the wrong people. As agents spread through the archive collecting decades of evidence, I turned toward Vincent. He was gone. Only the folder remained. Inside, beneath every document, lay one final envelope addressed in my mother's handwriting. Open this only after you learn to ask why before deciding who to blame. The envelope stayed unopened until sunrise. Not because I feared what my mother had written. Because for the first time in years, I understood that some truths deserved the right version of you. The man who had fired Amara would have read those words looking for someone else to blame. The man standing there now, wanted to understand. Outside the archive, federal agents continued loading decades of financial records into evidence trucks. Board members resigned before they were arrested. Several executives surrendered without being questioned. The empire everyone thought was untouchable hadn't fallen because someone fired a gun. It fell because someone finally refused to hide the truth. 3 weeks later, Vaughn Holdings held its first public board meeting. Television cameras filled the room. Shareholders expected denial. Lawyers expected carefully chosen statements. Instead, I walked to the podium carrying only one folder. I won't defend every decision this company has ever made. The room became silent. Because some of them should never have been made. Questions erupted immediately. Are you admitting criminal responsibility? No. I'm accepting moral responsibility. There is a difference. I announced the dissolution of the foundation. Independent oversight for every charitable program. Full cooperation with every investigation. And one final decision. I am resigning as executive chairman. The reporters looked stunned. So did the board. Power had spent years convincing me that letting go meant losing. It never mentioned that sometimes letting go is how you stop becoming the very thing you feared. After the meeting, Malcolm approached me outside the courthouse. He looked older. Not from prison. From relief. I don't expect forgiveness. You won't get it today. He nodded. I know. I blamed you for everything. You blamed yourself long before I helped. Neither of us smiled. Some wounds close quietly. Not quickly. He extended one document. My full testimony. Use it however you think your father would have wanted. Then he walked away. Not as my advisor. Not as my enemy. Just another man finally telling the truth. I found Amara exactly where I should have looked first. The community center. Children were painting wooden birdhouses beneath the autumn sun. She knelt beside a little girl, laughing as bright blue paint covered both of their hands. For a moment, she looked nothing like the woman who had carried the weight of secrets for strangers. She looked free. When she noticed me, she stood. You look different. I asked fewer people what they thought. And more people why. She smiled. There you are. I handed her my mother's envelope. I finally read it. What did she say? I unfolded the letter one last time. The paper had softened from being read too often. Her handwriting remained steady. Christopher, the day someone gives you a reason to doubt another person, pause. Ask one question before making one judgment. A leader who listens will lose arguments. But a leader who refuses to listen will lose people. Choose people. Love, Mom. I folded the letter carefully. If I had listened sooner. Amara gently interrupted me. But you listened eventually. The breeze carried children's laughter across the courtyard. I looked at her. Would you ever consider working for me again? She laughed softly. As your maid? No. I shook my head. As the person who reminds me when I'm becoming the man I promised never to be. Her eyes filled with quiet warmth. I could do that. We walked toward the children together. No bodyguards. No headlines. No orders. Just two people who had survived the cost of believing appearances more than truth. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had never watched those missing 23 seconds of security footage. Then I remember the woman who walked away without defending herself because protecting someone else mattered more than protecting her own name. I believed the maid betrayed me. The cameras proved she hadn't. But they revealed something far more important. The greatest betrayal wasn't hers. It was mine, the moment I chose certainty, before choosing to ask why.